Well, good evening, everybody, from a sweltering London. I believe it's hotter here than it is in Tel Aviv. In fact, it is Baghdad hot, you could say. My name is Lynn Julius, and I'm ably assisted here by Lawrence. And I'm here representing Harif, which is the UK Association of Jews from the Middle East and North Africa. As most of you know by now, we aim to raise awareness of the history and culture of Jews from that region. And you'll find our forthcoming program at www.harif.org. To receive Zoom details, you'll need to subscribe to our mailing list. And we have a sister website, a news blog. Please click on news on the Harif website to see our news blog, Point of No Return. And you can subscribe to daily alerts as well. We are recording this session and it'll be up shortly under videos on the Harif website. If you have comments to make, please write them in the chat. And I would particularly like to hear from anyone who has personal experience of the Farhud, although I know that they must be at least 85 or 90 years old by now. No, more than that, because you wouldn't be able to remember what had happened. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce what we are going to talk about tonight. Tonight, we are marking 85 years since the Farhud, which is the massacre which shattered the Iraqi Jewish community in Iraq in 1941. It was a cataclysmic event. It broke out on Shavuot, which fell on the 1st and 2nd of June 1941. And the word Farhud, I believe, is Arabic for forced dispossession. It was an unprecedented event in the recent history of the Jews of Iraq. Some 179 identified Jews were murdered, but the death toll could have been up to 600. About 12,000 Jews were made homeless. And of course, it sounded the death knell for the Iraqi Jewish community. Within 10 years, 90% of the Iraqi Jews had fled. And today, just 2 Jews, I believe, still live in Iraq. So what I would like to do now is take you back 2,600 years, give you a short presentation on the history of behind this event. So the Jewish community of Iraq is the oldest Jewish diaspora. It goes back to the Babylonian exile in 586 BCE, when King Nebuchadnezzar took the Jews as captive slaves from Jerusalem. There by the rivers of Babylon, they sat down and wept as they remembered Zion. Only 70 years later, the Persian king Cyrus decreed that the Jews could return to Jerusalem, but life was so good that many decided to stay there, and the community was in continuous residence in the land of the two rivers until about 50 years ago. It was in Babylonia that Judaism, as we practice today, was shaped, and the scholars of the pre-Islamic academies of Sura and Pumbedita and Nehadea, the academics in those pre-Islamic academies wrote the Babylonian Talmud, and Rabbi Hillel was born in Babylonia. And here is a map of present-day Iraq. The community had its ups and downs, and the Jews became subjugated dhimmis under Islam. But they outlived the Medes and the Persians, the Umayyads, the Abbasids, the Mongols, the Arabs, and the Ottoman Turks, right up until 1917, when the British defeated the Turks, who sided with the Germans in World War I, and they created the state of Iraq out of 3 Ottoman provinces. It was under the British that the Jews experienced their short golden age. And during the 1920s, the finance minister was a Jew, Sir Sasson Heskel, who is the gentleman on the right. And this picture shows my 2 grandfathers with the handlebar moustaches standing there at the back. And they were importing and exporting goods from India and Europe. And Jews then comprised 1/3 of Baghdad and were the single largest ethnic group. And here is a meeting of the Baghdad Chamber of Commerce in 1938. Of 18 members, 10 were Jews. Jews were also prominent writers, musicians, and singers. So Iraq became nominally independent in 1932. The king of Iraq, Faisal, died in 1933, but a massacre of 600 Assyrian Christians in the north of the country did not bode well for the minorities. Although Faisal had been a friend of the Jews, he had brought with him a group of fierce nationalists. Sati al-Husri was a Syrian who became Director General of the Ministry of Education in Iraq. From the late 1920s, fascist influence rose in Iraq, as did anti-Semitic sentiment. Jewish civil servants were dismissed, although later reinstated. Quotas on Jews in universities and the professions were introduced. Reuben Zaslani was a teacher in Baghdad. He was sent back to Palestine in 1935. He writes here to a Muslim friend in the government that he detected a strong anti-Jewish movement. Even official circles are supporting it, he wrote. Many members of the Sunni governing elite had served in the Ottoman army alongside German officers and admired German militarism. Nationalist parties were established on the Nazi model, and pro-Nazi paramilitary youth groups, such as the Futua, attended the Hitlerjugend torchlight procession in Berlin in 1938. With Germany's eye on Iraq's vast oil reserves, the German ambassador, Fritz Grobber, who you see on the left, set up a network of spies and sympathizers in order to forge an anti-British alliance. He had Mein Kampf serialized in an Iraqi newspaper. By the end of the decade, the Nazis agreed to recognize the Arabs as honorary Aryans. Sorry, this is jumping around a bit. The Mufti of Jerusalem, who you see here at the bottom, Haj Amin al-Husseini, arrived in Baghdad in 1939, together with 400 Syrian and Palestinians. The Mufti spent 2 years attempting to overthrow the pro-British government, inciting the local Muslims against the Jews, who were seen as collaborators with the British. After several failed attempts, the Mufti gave his backing to a pro-Nazi coup led by the nationalist Rashid Ali al-Gilani and 4 army officers, forcing the pro-British regent into exile. It is said that Rashid Ali and his cohorts had plans to round up and exterminate the Jews of Iraq in concentration camps. The fanatical anti-Semite Yunus al-Sabawi met the chief rabbi, Sassoon Kaduri, to tell him that the Jews should lock themselves in their homes and prepare enough food for 3 days. Was this so they could be rounded up and sent to desert camps? It took just 3 days for the British to topple the Nazi government and put to flight the Mufti and his acolytes. They fled to Iran and ended up in Berlin as guests of Hitler, but the damage had been done. On the 1st of June, 1941, a group of Jews who'd been locked in their homes ventured out in their Shavuot best suits. As they stood at the bridge over the Tigris, the Farhud started. A mob of defeated Iraqi soldiers and pro-Nazis, including some police, later joined by Bedouins in search of loot, began to pull Jews out of buses and kill them. Was the Farhud premeditated? I believe it was. The paramilitary youth group, the Futua, had gone around daubing a red handprint on the Jewish homes, and the riot began in the old Jewish quarter on the left bank of the Tigris. Why did the British not intervene? The staff of the British embassy could hear the screams and gunshots coming from across the river. But the British Army was under orders not to intervene until on the second day, the mob began to attack Muslim quarters. The British Army was encamped 8 miles from Baghdad, but did not enter the city. They did not want to be seen to be reoccupying the country. But once the orders had been given, the riot was put down very quickly by midday on the 2nd of June. Now, we know that the British knew what was going on. This was the British ambassador who was across the river from the old Jewish quarter. And a visitor to the embassy a few days later had a chat with Sir Kinahan Cornwallis, the ambassador, and he wrote in his memoirs, Somerset de Share wrote in his memoirs that Kinahan Cornwallis had told him that at least 2,000 people, mostly Jews, were believed to have been killed in the one night's looting, a figure which was subsequently reduced to 700. The Farhud victims were buried in this mass grave, which was subsequently demolished in 1958. Although prosperity did return to the Jews of Iraq in the years following the Farhud, they had received a terrible shock. Members of the Iraqi intelligentsia defended Rashid Ali. No writers mentioned it, while popular songs celebrated it. When Israel was declared in 1948, the Iraqi government began to persecute the Jews of Iraq. The fear returned of a second Farhud breaking out, and this, more than anything else, caused the Jews of Iraq to flee, I believe. Most moved to Israel in 1950 and 51. Other Farhuds followed in other countries, resulting in the flight of Jews from those communities. So the question is, was this a Holocaust event or just another pogrom? And perhaps we could ask our expert for his take a bit later. But I think it is true to say it was something new, a toxic brew of anti-Semitism inspired by Nazism. and the result of nationalism that had no place for non-Muslim minorities. And it set off a pattern of dismantlement and dispossession reminiscent of the Nuremberg laws. More Jews died than on Kristallnacht, yet the Farhud has not become part of Holocaust memory. And I believe the wartime Mufti's anti-Semitism is with us still in the form of the ideology of the Muslim Brotherhood, Gaza branch, Hamas. So thank you very much for listening to this short presentation. Now, what I would like to do is show you a film which we actually made in collaboration with the Spanish synagogue in Montreal for the 80th anniversary. And it's about 10 minutes long.
Few days before the Farhud, actually, I saw Khamsa, somebody put like their hand with red on our door. Asked my mother, what is that? So she said, well, maybe somebody just made a mistake or they think that they were Jewish people or something. But they were actually mentioning all the Jewish homes a few days before the Farhud because they were planning for something like that to happen.
Yeah, I remember we left Baghdad a day before the Farhud. We were so scared. We left at night, and a chef was with us to protect us. We took the train. The train was full of soldiers. There were no civilian at all. We were the only civilian, and we were all so scared. And before reaching Khanaqin, we saw Rashid Adi and Gilani and Mufti. They were escaping. We saw them in the car. Baba said, oh, here they are. I didn't know. So then once we got to Kabashan, there was only one hotel there. We stayed there and we saw all three of them there. They were having breakfast and dinner with us in the same area. And after that, we went to Iran. We had a cook, and my mother sent him to the shops. We didn't know there is anything wrong. To the shops to get something, to buy something. He came home, and he told my mother, "What can I tell you? They are trying the Jewish houses. They break in, they rape the girls, or they kill them, and they take their furniture." And we were in the list, they gave our house, our address. So immediately, we didn't have telephone or anything. My father and my mother and we three children, we went to my aunt. The first day in the morning, somebody came in the morning, early in the morning. He's the cook of my auntie. Mm. And his face was pale and he was shivering. And he said, I was at the bus. They stopped the bus and they said, all the Jews get out. So they came to him. He's very fair. He didn't look Jewish. He's very fair. They got him. He said, I'm Jewish. He said, I'm Christian. Mm-hmm. They let him go. And he was very lucky. He came over to us. We told him, stay with us.
stay with us, have a rest. We go to give him a drink, something to eat. After some time, he said, I have to go back to my job. I am the cook.
And unfortunately, on June the 1st, 1941, we suddenly heard people shouting and yelling and outside our houses. We had a tree, nakhla, at the beginning of the house, and I climbed the tree, and so it's about 15 feet high, and I was hiding in between to see what's happening outside. And I saw a lot of men with swords in their hands, with rifles and what kind of things, and they're shouting, "اقتل اليهود اتبع اليهود." Kill the Jews, kill the Jews. And I was saying to myself, what the hell did I do at 9 years old that they want to come kill me?
It was time near Shavuot. 7 o'clock in the morning, the milk woman, she used to bring the milk every morning. She came to the back door and she told my mother, let everybody stays in today. She said, why? She said, I don't know, but it's better to stay in. Don't let anybody go out of the house. Half an hour later, she came and she said, come with me. All of you, come with me.
My biggest brother was in an area where they came, and he kept his wife and his children in one room. And then when they came, he told them the money is there, but don't touch the. So they said he's a national one. Only stole everything. He did not. They did not leave him a trousers, but they did not kill the children.
Went and sheltered with our next door neighbor, who was my first cousin. And the looters were passing by. Yeah. And he said, if they turn up and assault my cousins, I'd rather shoot my cousins than lose the honor. We were still in our pajamas, before breakfast, before anything. We followed her. She took us to her hut, a small room, half the size of this room, mostly bedding. By the time we closed the back door, the front door was broken down. And the mob came in. We didn't see them, luckily. We could hear the noise, the bullets. We closed the door and we sat there. She told us nobody to speak. We could hear bullets. We could hear screaming. We didn't know what was happening. Our parents didn't even, they said to us not to speak, put their fingers on their mouth. We stayed there from 7 o'clock in the morning till 5:30 in the evening. No food, no water, hot. Worst of all, no toilet. My aunt, they are very rich. They have a very big house. They are in the corner of one street. The other corner, a Muslim solicitor or something like that. But they are in very good terms with him. They sent someone to ask the Muslim solicitor if we can come, and they are not a family of 5. We are about 30 people. They said no problem.
come all of it.
The youth
So we
ones.
went to this Muslim, and they were, I do still remember the woman asking go and bring yogurt for the children, go and bring coffee, milk, whatever, you know. They were very helpful.
But what I saw is our landlord, who was our next door neighbor, at the time he wore a green hat, let's call it, because he was a Haji. And I saw that he had a chair in front of our house. And when the whole mob came in, they stopped right in front of him. And they were talking to him. But of course, I couldn't hear what they said. I only found out later that when they came, they wanted to go into our house. He told them that there was a woman with she's a widow with 9 children, and she asked for his protection. If they want to go and get them, they have to kill him first. So we were saved by this Muslim Haji. Thank God there were some good people like that. Then they went to our neighbors, and I can hear the screams of women being raped, mutilated.
Apparently, there was one army fellow who used to buy, who finished his bullet, used to buy every bullet for 1 dinar. Dinar was a pound then, to kill Jews, if there are any Jews. And he used to say, there were nearly 17 Jewish people in this house. Where are they? Was looking for us. And she said to him, they went in the morning, early morning, they went to the other friend. Her aim was, if we had anything buried or anything hidden, to find out before we would be killed. Because at the end of the evening, at lunchtime, she came, pulled a drawer, and got a saber, a big, long knife, put it in her belt. And my father asked her, Jamila, you will want to sleep in the evening. Where will you put us? He said, we will be digging a big hole. We put you in it and we'll cover you till the morning. And then you come back to the hut. I think my parents understood what's going to happen. By then, we will be killed and we'll be buried in that hole.
We thought, fine, the British are coming. We're going to be all right. I was standing outside my house, and immediately next to us, my neighbor, there was another school boy friend of mine. And I said, let us go for a walk. At that time, another Jewish fellow student came along, said, don't go out. They've started killing Jews. Okay? Now, it so happens that as he walked towards the end of the street, I saw that he was surrounded by other people. Later, I learned that he was murdered. And that was the night when, how can I describe it to you? There was a lot of, sometimes a period of eerie silence, I suppose, when the marauders were surrounding Jewish people. And then there would be a huge hysterical cry, presumably when a crime was committed. And there was a lot of shrieking and screaming that went on right through the night.
Then after what they did to our neighbors, they set the houses on fire. And that went all night. I don't know if they were alive, but all we know, because what they did is if they saw a radio, they took it. If they saw something interesting, they took furniture and things like that, and then they set the house on fire. But again, all night, like you heard people screaming and yelling, crying, and you couldn't do anything. There were some people we saw them jumping from house to house, running away. And we were saved from that whole street. We were the only one who were saved, actually, really.
A friend of my father was in the army. His name was Qasim. He was looking for my father. He knew about the pogrom. He was looking for my father. He kept on ringing, but of course the phone was taken, was cut. So he came in this fellow's car to look for us. What he found, the house was empty, literally empty. Even the windows were taken out. The doors were taken out. The banisters were taken out. And there were only papers in the house. And our cat, we used to have a cat, she was meowing all the time. And there was no sign of life at all.
I was in my brother's house during the celebration, and I had to go home. My brother advised me not to go in the street, but I go in the street called Rashid. All those who went back from the new street called Ghazi Street were killed. They used to stop all the buses and see who is Jew and they kill him. Went to buy food. The street, they called the street, and we arrived safely.
So we took a carriage, and I sat in my father's lap. And all the time, he used to put his hand on my eyes so that I don't see what is in the street, especially Shara al-Rashid. Either the blood on the ground or the stores were broken. So there was a sort of a chaos everywhere. And police was here and there. Yeah. So finally we arrived at our home. And first thing, the door was broken. It was they broke the lock of the door and went inside. When we went inside, the house was simply empty. There was nothing. They took all the furniture, all the food. All what is left is some grains of rice on the floor.
So he asked the people, where are these people who lived in this house? He pulled his gun and he said, I will shoot you if you don't tell me. He said to him, I know where they are and I will take you to them. So he came in these little narrow alleyways calling Salah. But this woman, Jamila, told us not to speak and not to make a noise or that nobody would know that we were there. We didn't answer. Saleh, Saleh, Saleh. At the end, he came and he said, Saleh, I am Qasim. So we came out. He took us to this car. We couldn't fit. So many of us. Who do you leave behind? Those are left behind will be killed. In those days, the car used to have a platform. And then you open the door. So they stood on the platform, put their hand around the windows, and we all fitted in.
So my father said, I'm going to bring some food. So where we go, where to sit? We found a newspaper. My mother put it on the floor, and my brother slept on that. And then my father went to bring something. He came back, he brought just a few pieces of cheese, some dates, one pita, and he said, everything is closed. There is nowhere to get things. And he went to the stores to buy some dishes. He could get only one dish and two knives.
Oh
and I still keep one of the knives as a souvenir till today.
The next day, my father took us to get the passport renewed, and he took us immediately. A few days, We went to my brother in Iran. We registered in the American school for a year and a half. Then we went to India.
Well, actually, after the young Jews almost all became political. There were two elites, political. One is the communist, one is Zionist. Many people went to the Zionist movement, many went to the communist. Sometimes in one brother is Zionist, is communist. And
I joined the Mahtarat only later when I was 16 years old. Because we figured at the time we're not going to have that again happening to us as the Farhud, because if another time is going to happen, we're going to have to be ready. Because we were not ready in 1941. We thought everything was good. We are Iraqis, we are citizens. There is a police that will protect us. That was not so. And so this is really one infamous day that I shall never forget.
You felt you are a second-class citizen. You felt you are Jewish and you are not wanted. You are taken advantage of. My sibling, we all felt the same thing. I mean, it gave us a shock. It gave us an outlook on life that we have to hide. We were not proud to be Jewish.
Well, that was quite a moving film, wasn't it? And I'm very glad that we've got these precious testimonies, because a number of those people who were interviewed in that film are no longer with us. So now I would like to ask Joe Samuels, who's very much with us and who actually survived the Farhud, to tell his story briefly. Joe? We'll just unmute you, Lawrence. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Lynn.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, this is a really moving movie. It's so impressive. And I knew Steve Ecker very well when I lived in Montreal for 22 years. My story that I was born in Taht Takia, the old Jewish quarter, and we were fortunate that a year earlier we moved to Babi Shargi, and that's a better area. And my experience is we didn't know what's happening the first day. The first day of the Farhud, there's two things difference. One, Radio Baghdad was silent, was not talking about any news. They played marches, and we heard some bullets. We heard some going on there, but we didn't know what's happening. We had no phone. We had no communication. My older brother, who was 16 years old, took his bicycle and went to visit the family, his uncle, his cousins in the old city. When he arrived and saw the both doors were broken and the two houses was totally looted. Later on, we heard that they were safe. Only my aunt jumping from one roof to another broke her leg. He rushed back to see us, and he went through the main street Al Rashid, where he was horrified to see that mobs were picking up the Jews from the mini buses. We didn't have big buses. They were well dressed because it was Shavuot, and robbed them and then slaughtered them. He saw the blood flowing on the street. So he rushed back to our home. We all faced a tremendous trauma to hear these stories. And we immediately enforced the front door with heavy furniture in order to delay the breaking in our houses. I was 10 years old, and I carried water to the roof with some oil to boil, just in case if they come, we will try to delay them, that we can escape. We heard the mobs few blocks away, but luckily they didn't arrive to our home in Babi Shargi. So this is during the 2 months of the coup of Rashid Ali, I used to cry every night. I didn't know what's happening, because when they came in, all newspapers and describing the Jews as traitors, not Arabs, and they are not nationals. And of course, Radio Baghdad was always the same thing. I didn't know what we do. My father was a textile merchant and had some Muslim customers who always praised him to be honorable, fearing God, they pay. And suddenly we hear this, what is happening to us. So I was really devastated. But we were saved, So this is a brief story. If you have any other questions, it was terrible time during the coup, during the 2 months from April 1st to May 31st. What's a daily. I couldn't go to school, but I could read the paper in Arabic and I could listen to the radio, and I was horrified. We were fortunate, so we accommodated my uncle because he had no furniture. They came to our house and we accommodated. Then we helped them buy new furniture to move their houses. So this is a brief story of my experience at the Farhud as a 10 years old boy.
Thank you very much indeed, Joe, and you tell it so well. And just to say that Joe Samuels has actually written a book called Beyond the Rivers of Babylon, telling his experiences in Iraq and when he left Iraq too.
By the way,
I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Uzi Rabia, who, as well as being a well-known television pundit in Israel, is the chairman of the Babylonian Jewry Heritage Center at Or Yehuda. So what I would like to know from you, Uzi, is, your take on the Farhud. How significant is it? How can we, what extent was it Nazi inspired? How can we tell people about it? How can we spread the word? And what were the consequences of it, not just for the Jews of Iraq, but for others as well? Oh, no, they're muted. Sorry, Lawrence.
No, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Well, unmute yourself. Great.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Lean, for inviting me. Thank for the organizers of Harif. I am really honored to be here with you and to speak at this important seminar of remembrance. especially as I am here as chairman of the Babylonian Jewry Heritage Center, representing the memory and heritage of the Jews of Iraq. Of course, I mean, we should just focus on the Farhud, because this is kind of a turning point in the history of Iraqi Jewry. But basically, what one should put in front of his eyes always is the simple fact that more than, I would say, 2.5 millennia, Babylonian Jewry constituted a real pillar of Jewish civilization. I mean, we have to remember that even before the Farhud, what Jews actually were known to do is to provide the Jewish people the Babylonian Talmud, great academies of learning, religious leadership, poetry, music, customs, and I would say a rich communal life that was rooted in faith, family, and tradition. These are things that are memorized and wonderfully portrayed, I would say, in our center in Or Yehuda. So Farhud, which took place in Baghdad, as was said, in the 1st and 2nd of June, 1941, yes, it was a terrible act of violence against the Jews of Iraq. But the most important thing is that it was much more than a pogrom. It marked, I would say, a profound turning point in the history of Jews in Iraq. This is something that should serve here as a main layer by which to pass a judgment on Farhud. Because until then, Iraqi Jews, and it was definitely expressed in this in our today discussion, Iraqi Jews saw themselves as deeply connected to the land in which they had lived for generations. They saw themselves loyal citizens. We know how active they were in commerce, culture, public life, and other professions alike. What Farhud actually served to do is to shatter that sense of security. It exposed in a minute the dangerous power of anti-Semitic incitement, the poor performance of authorities to protect a minority, and the beginning of the end for a community that had flourished here for millennia. So within a decade, it can be said that almost all Iraqi Jews, not all of them, but most of them, had left the country, and this ancient chapter of Jewish history was almost brought to a painful close. We in the center actually are introducing nowadays a kind of an exhibition which is titled The End of a Diaspora, and we deal about the later on events after 1951 in Iraq. But basically, while focusing on 1950-51, the majority of Jews left Iraq. Our duty today, in my opinion, is not only to remember the victims. Yeah, that is a sacred mission, of course, but also to honor the world they came from. A world of scholarship, dignity, creativity, and I would say a deep Jewish identity. At the Babylonian Jewry Heritage Center, our mission is not only to preserve the legacy and to pass it on to future generations. What I think we should do is also hail it and elevate it and turn it into kind of an integral part of the history of Jews, because this is the most ancient diaspora. The story is yet to be told, to be researched, and to be brought into the Israeli ethos that is being built up these days, especially after the 7th of October atrocities. So what we are trying to do is to work with universities, school, Ministry of Education, in order to make sure that the story of the Babylonian Jewry and the Farhud are going actually to take their place in the ethos of Israel. Now, I think that we can say some more things about Farhud, but Lynn, I don't want actually to pass the 10 minutes actually that were allocated to me, and maybe we should take some sort of a short Q&A, but if you want me to go on, that is okay too.
If you're okay, I'm very happy for you to go on. I just wondered whether you think that it should be considered as a Holocaust event, and what can be done to get Holocaust museums to memorialize the Farhud.
So, well, in my opinion, this should not be titled as Holocaust. Holocaust is something which is unique. It happened in Europe, but I would say that there is kind of a linkage between Farhud and Holocaust, and Yulin actually was portraying the whole history in kind of a very, very colorful way, while, bringing in the zeitgeist of the 30s and the Kailani government there in Iraq. Now, in my opinion, this is something that we have to bring in. I mean, young people should understand that history can disappear if it is not taught. Farhud teaches us about the danger of hatred and incitement. And as such, it should be definitely brought into Holocaust museums, albeit in a different scale. So I think that, of course, there is much to be done about that, and much, in my opinion, should be inquired into in order to, provide kind of a smooth entrance of the story of Farhud to every Holocaust museum which respects itself, definitely. And I would say that it is not only to be dealt with Iraqi Jews. You can, of course, talk about Benghazi in Libya and what happened there in the Second World War. But basically, we have to just speak up all these stories about Jews of Arab land, so to speak, and create kind of a plot or kind of, I would say, a narrative that must be brought into what we call, the Jewish memory. And as such, it should be not only in Yad Vashem, but in every Holocaust museum which respects itself.
Right. Well, we have a few comments here. Yitzhak Kerem, who of course is an expert on the Holocaust and how it affected the Sephardi world, says that the Nazis in their indoctrination worked rather quietly, preparing the Futuwa youth movement and 3 other youth militias. And most of the army was indoctrinated with Nazi ideology and funded, well, by
Definitely.
Nazi Germany. You'd agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with
Yeah.
that totally. Nazi propaganda and anti-Semitic ideology was there. It had influence in Iraq at the time. I spent, as I say, especially around the what we call the pro-Nazi Rashid Ali government. I think that that is well known. I don't. Nobody could definitely deny it. But I dare say that this hatred was also molded or blended with a kind of I would say some motives that should be understood in line with the Arab political culture too. So there is a hybrid thing here, which definitely was fed by Nazi propaganda and anti-Semitic ideology. But the simple fact that such motives and ideas were wrote into the new Arab political culture that was emerging at the time there, well, that was very, very crucial for Iraq, for other Arab states. And basically, after the Second World War, this understanding or this ideology is going actually to dictate the tone in the Arab Middle East, unfortunately.
And would you say that the Farhud has left a legacy today in the ideology of Islamism? I mean, and the influence of the Mufti?
I think so. When we talk about that, in my opinion, this is sort of a portent of things to come. What happened in Iraq in the Farhud was to be seen not only in Iraq later on, but as I said, actually, in some other Arab states, especially after the 1948 independence of Israel, of course. I have my family members that were to stay in Iraq until 71, 72. And it is fascinating to listen to them actually. How was their experience after 50, 51? But basically, it had a kind of a linkage to what's going on with Israel, new Israel or newly created Israel, and its wars against Arabs. So basically, that was kind of a beginning of something new in the Middle East, and who were to, I would say, to be squeezed and to, in a way, be damaged by that are the Jews of Iraq. In my opinion, what we should do is just, not only talk about that. So I agree with the story, with the narrative, definitely. But, if we are actually going into more details, I would say that we should talk about that every year, but not as nostalgia. In my opinion, this is a living legacy, I would say, for future generations. So if you ask me what is the message, once again, I think that Farhud teaches us about the mere danger of hatred and incitement. But also, I can talk about resilience. We can talk about the Jews of Iraq. They lost homes, they lost security, but they carried their heritage until this moment with them, actually coming to Israel or London or elsewhere. Today, this heritage, in my opinion, continues in Israel, maybe in Britain too, and around the world. What should be done now is something that we are focusing on. And as I said before, what I think we need is more education, more research, more public recognition, more cooperations between communities and institutions. Farhud should be including in teaching about the Second World War. Because what is going on in Israel is that what is mainly be taught and learned is the history of European Jews. Well, I'm not going actually to compare suffering, and definitely what happened in Europe, it is just, the horror in full scale. But once again, if we are going actually to bring in Farhud into the curricula while teaching about the Second World War, anti-Semitism, Jewish history, and the history of the Middle East, remembrance is going to become not only an act of respect for the past, it is sort of a responsibility for the future. So this is what I want actually to deliver here. This is for us kind of a legacy of resilience, kind of an event that heralds the end of a flourishing community, very, very successful. But we don't have actually to talk about the past, because Babylonian Talmud is kind of an asset which is being learned in the yeshivas here in Israel. When we talk about, people like Natana Bavli, in Arabic, Tah al-Baghdadi, if we talk about Ben Ishchai, just to take something from the modern times, these guys, or Ezra and Nehemiah, these guys are part and parcel of the Jewish history. And we even tend to go to the extreme, saying that if you would like actually to really characterize the Tzabar or the Israeli Jew here in Israel, you would find that it is a kind of a person who is expressing the melange of attributes that are, I would say, Iraqi Jews are identified with: commerce, learning, scholarship, multicultural relations. This is the story of the then Iraq and the story of the Jews of Babylon. And basically our motto in our center is from Babel le-Israel, which means from Babel to Israel. And we do believe that while dealing with this deep-rooted history, one can bring in some fresh tools and ideas of how to build up a unified Israeli ethos here in Israel, something which is highly needed these days. And basically, there's a lot to say, but we take the Farhud as a kind of, we have to just remember the agony, remember actually the atrocities. But on the other hand, this is something from which we could be inspired, because it definitely served as kind of a reminder of what we did have there for more than a millennia. So this is something that I would, and with your permission, Lynn, there is one more thing I think should be stressed out here. Let's not forget that Jews were forced to leave Iraq, and I would say other Arab countries too. And all of them, in my opinion, should be recognized and regarded as refugees. In Iraq, after the Tasqit law, Jews had to give up their citizenship in order to leave with no property. Because soon after, their property, bank accounts, homes, businesses, everything was frozen or confiscated. So many left with almost nothing. And I mean nothing. I can have the story of my family. They were to come to Israel and live in Ma'bara, which is sort of a transitional
transit camp. Yeah.
transit camp. Yeah. This was not simply immigration. It was the uprooting of an ancient community from its homeland. Now, across the Arab world, and I know that you know that better than me, around 850,000 or 900,000 Jews were displaced after 1948. A number often compared with the Palestinian refugee population. And this is very important. This comparison should not be used to deny Palestinian suffering. I'm not doing that here. But it should be used to show that there were two refugee stories in the Middle East. And this is what we are trying to do with our, utmost efforts. Palestinian refugees and Jewish refugees from Arab lands. And Israel absorbed the Jewish refugees, gave them citizenship, but their lost property and rights were never properly resolved. Internationally, definitely not in Iraq. So here you have kind of a thing to fight for.
Yeah. Well, I know lots of people are fighting for those rights. I can see Livana, who's here on the call, who's very active on behalf of the Jews of Egypt, and in fact, active on behalf of all Jews from Arab countries. And no, I applaud your enthusiasm for more education. I'm sure you're absolutely right, and it's so important, as you say, for the Israeli ethos. But isn't it also important outside Israel? Because as Professor Yitzhak Keren points out, there were no American diplomatic reports of the Farhud at the time. In fact, when we went to Kew, the National Archives, the British Archives, my husband Lawrence found there were loads of pages missing from files of that time, of 1941. So it's obvious that the British had something to hide. So perhaps we should be doing more to educate people outside Israel.
More than that, they said they'd been deliberately removed and destroyed.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, I can tell you my experience as a child here in Israel. And then when it comes to, the school, even the army and thereafter, when I asked actually, innocently, where is the story of Iraqi Jews? Where is the Farhud in our teaching, actually in our, experience at school as pupils? And, we had a wonderful teacher, history teacher, really wonderful. I learned a lot from here. But unfortunately, what he said, actually, with replying to what I asked, we are focusing on the most important issues. And that was something that provided me a bitter lesson, because I knew that this thing must be fought for. And if I am going actually to leave that behind, I think that if we are going to leave that behind, future generations, there is no chance they would know what it is about. And this is why our center is doing a lot in that sense, because we definitely think of ourselves as the remnants of this ancient Jewish diaspora. But this is our last chance to bring it in kind of a most organized way, that it would serve and be part and parcel about the whole narrative, about the whole story. And Levana Zamir is doing what she does, and she has done great. And you, Lean, and others are doing your doings, but basically it is time for us to collaborate, to cooperate, and create kind of a huge and focused effort in order to bring it in. We have to leave the full story and the ramifications, the consequences when we are done and next generations are coming to the fore. This is highly important for the state of Israel, because this is the story you could glean from a lot of vitality power and a lot of vitality and a lot of, I would say some, as I said before, fresh ideas of to how renew or create sort of a mini renaissance in kind of society that is really seeking for that. So for me, the story of Farhud and Babylonian Jewry, of course, some other Arab land, Jews of Arab land communities, is definitely kind of a lesson to be learned. And in my opinion, this should be one of the pillars of the, I would say, the new Israeli period or chapter from now on. So I guess that all of us definitely agree that this is a sacred mission, and this is a mission not to our families only and our ancestors. This is something that is greater than life. And I do believe that we are in a critical moment. We have to do that, and I'm pretty sure that we will succeed in that. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And how wonderfully expressed. That is, I think this is a very fitting note to end on. We're looking to the future. We're looking to a new chapter, as you say. And we hope that this will, the education will really be the key to everything. So thank you very much indeed, Professor.
Thank you. It's my
Uzi,
pleasure.
for
Thank you,
joining
Lee.
us. And if anyone hasn't been to the Babylonian Jewry Heritage Center, I really do encourage you to go. It's only about 15 minutes out of Tel Aviv. It's a beautiful building with fabulous exhibitions in it, and they're changing all the time. And I'm confident that under the chairmanship of Professor Rabi, it'll go from strength to strength. So thank you so much for joining us for So if everybody is happy to stay with us, we have the commercial break. Lawrence? Yeah, here we go. An idea of future events. So this is tonight. Oh, it's a bit slow tonight.
Probably it was too fast last time.
This is an in-person talk that I will be giving at JW3. I'm not sure if there are any tickets left. Followed by a talk on Ellie Cohen, which hopefully you will find interesting. And there's a premiere of a film about Libyan Jews, a story of Libyan Jewish heroism to come in July. And after that, we actually have an event on Singapore, which I think you might find interesting in July. The Baghdadi Builders of Singapore. That's on the 21st of July. So I think at this stage we will probably stop recording, but if you want to stay on and say anything